Hi, everyone. It's 4:30, and I'm going to start with calling the meeting to order and then ask for some grace, as this is my first time as co-chair of the committee, and Joan is also out today. Okay, and with that, we will start with our land and labor acknowledgement. I'll let some folks come in once we get this started. Perfect. We acknowledge that the land that now makes up the United States of America was the traditional home, hunting ground, trade exchange point, and migration route of more than 574 American Indian and Alaska Native federally recognized tribes, and many more tribal nations that are not federally recognized or no longer exist. We recognize the cruel legacy of slavery and colonialism in our nation and acknowledge that the people whose labor was exploited for generations to help establish the economy of the United States. We honor Indigenous, enslaved, and immigrant peoples' resilience, labor, and stewardship of the land and commit to creating a future founded on respect, justice, and inclusion for all people as we work to heal the deepest generational wounds. As we acknowledged, we are meeting on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina people, and the Dena'ina word for September, as this is our September meeting, translates to month the birds fly south, which is one of my favorite Dena'ina months. Pastor May has joined us. And we will go ahead and do introductions. I will kick us off and then we'll go around the room and go online. My name is Taylor Donovan. I use she, her pronouns, and I am newly the co-chair of the Equity Committee and asking for some grace as this is our first meeting since that change. I, in my day job, represent Rural Cap and am excited to be here. And I'll hand it over to Thea.
Good evening, everyone. This is Thea Agnew-Benben, and I'm also happy to be here.
Good evening, Pastor Leon D. May I, River in the Desert Community Church, and also serving the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance of Anchorage and Vicinity and the MLK Foundation of Alaska.
Hello, everyone. Celeste with the Alaska Black Caucus.
And then we'll go to online. It looks like we have Lori on the line. Lori, if you don't want to use your voice, we can also check in for you.
No worries. This is Lori Pickett with Alaska Literacy Program. And I can't, I'm sorry, but the chat doesn't work for me. It says I'm not allowed to chat, so I won't be able to communicate in the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Not sure why it's not letting her chat. We would have to read it out loud anyway, but I will see what I can do.
Thanks, Jasmine. And next up, we have Mara Kimmel.
Hi, everybody. Mara Kimmel here from the ACLU of Alaska.
And Teresa Holt.
Hi, this is Teresa Holt from AARP Alaska.
Heather Ireland.
Hi, Heather Ireland with Anchorage School-Based Health Centers.
And then Assemblymember Perez Verdilla.
Hey, everyone. Cameron Perez Verdilla from the Anchorage Assembly. Good to be here.
And Assemblymember Rivera.
Hi, everyone. Felix Rivera, Anchorage Assembly.
Okay, so first up on the agenda, we have unfinished business regarding a memo for language access audit. Lori is under the weather and unable to give the presentation, and Panna and Joan are not able to join. I'm going to suggest we move that to our meeting next month. And then for new business today, add a discussion surrounding the letter that Chair Constant sent out to the Assembly yesterday.
That was what I was going to recommend.
And I think we're looking for a motion on that.
Well, let's reorder the agenda and we'll go to the letter. And so I think that would determine everything else we do going forward or not. So, yeah, that's a motion.
And we got a second from Thea on that. Any discussion or opposition? Excellent. Hearing none, yesterday Jasmine sent out to the full committee a letter from Chair Constant letting us know that our October meeting will be the final committee meeting supported through the assembly. A little additional context, and I believe that the new chief equity officer for the mayor's office is planning to join us today, but in the last month, Joan and I met with her, I think her first week on the job, as recommended from the committee through our August meeting to pursue kind of a new home for this committee, and she was definitely open to that and is planning to join today's meeting to have some discussion on that. That being said, is there any discussion around next steps or reactions to the letter we received?
Personally, for myself, I would be interested in hearing something from our assembly liaisons as it relates to Mr. Cameron and Mr. Felix and thoughts on this letter. We've been, I guess, pursuant to the chair's authority, we've been effectively fired as a committee. And unless we're able to hitch a ride with the executive branch, then we'll be out of commission. And so I would be interested in hearing from the assembly liaisons as to their thoughts on this whole process. That's just me. I want to hear something.
Happy to speak to that, and then I can hand it off to Felix if he wants to add. Yeah, so I think both Felix and I were surprised by the letter. I had a chance to speak with him briefly earlier today. I did reach out to Chair Constant, and he communicated back that well, first of all, I think he did not intend for it to be the tone that it was, and so for whatever that means, I felt like it was the tone of the letter wasn't necessarily as the way that I would have hoped it to be. And also that it was his understanding that this was the plan, and so I can let others. I shared his note with Thea and with Felix. So as it relates to the letter, I think it's his position that there was a transition that was in the works, and that was something that was going to happen earlier, and that there was an extension to October to figure that out, and that's why the letter came. I would also just add that I don't have any reason to believe at this point that transition to serving as a committee for the chief equity officer, aka the administration, wouldn't and shouldn't happen. I think that the timing is faster than I would thought it would be. But yeah, that's probably all I have to add, is that I think the letter could have been and should have been done in a different way, and so that's a little frustrating, and but I still truly believe that this is an incredibly valuable committee that needs to continue on, and that the city needs this group very much to do the work, and that that it sounds like that there's a positive response from the new chief equity officer. So at this point, my suggestion would be that we continue to pursue that and get that to happen as soon as we can. But of course, I'm not in charge of that, but that would be my recommendation. That's all I've got, and I'll hand it over to Felix if he wants to add anything.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would add is I didn't attend the meeting that you all had with Kimberly last week or the week before that. So I'm not sure what the outcome of that particular meeting was, but it sounds like Kimberly is going to be coming to this meeting. So I hope that we can have a productive conversation with her today. And I mean, my hope is that there is no air gap between the end of the assembly support and the beginning of the administration support. I think that was always the intention and the goal on my end. I know that the chair had talked about some kind of sort of end of year stopping of the support for the assembly, and it appears he set his deadline at the chair's prerogative. I hope that we'll be able to make things work with the time that we have.
If I may follow up just before Celeste comes, is that okay? Yeah. If I might follow up, in previous meetings, there was the idea, Felix and Cameron, that you guys were going to be having some discussions with the mayor as it related to us moving forward on the executive side. And I guess my question would be, has any of those conversations taken place, or what is the mayor's involvement? Kimberly suggested, she stated to us in the meeting that we did have with her that she's more than willing to interact with this committee and work with us and support the committee going forward. But I think that would have to come from the top down. And so I was just wondering if you guys had any further discussions with the mayor concerning us attaching ourselves to the executive branch, the administrative side.
We can't hear you, Cameron.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I was just saying that I have not met with the mayor, talked with her about this since the first meeting that Felix and I had with her. I would so no, there's been no follow up from my end at least, and but that's easy to do. So I can, that's I think we both, Felix and I, have the ability to reach out to her and to have a conversation with her and or her chief of staff, and based on what happens today in terms of the committee's recommendation to move forward, and based on what we hear from the chief executive officer, I think that I'm willing to to reach out and to gather more information. That may also be a role of for Kim as well. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today, because it sounds like if Kim is willing, we just need to circle back with the mayor and her team and find out whether we can get a solid answer one way or the other. And the other thing that I know that she was trying to understand was, what does that look like? I think that there was some discussion about, budget. There was some discussion about, does the shape and form of this continue as it was? Do things change? And so I think that there was some interest in understanding what that all looked like before there was a final yes. So that may be part of the conversation that we have today. Thanks.
So I'd like to just share my thoughts. I'm actually feeling a certain kind of way right now.
If we was in church,
I'm feeling.
If we was in church, I'd say amen.
I'm feeling a negative vibe.
Yeah.
And I'm not good at poker. So my facial expressions are usually right on point with how I'm feeling. And I'm very disappointed. I mean, I feel like walking right now. Excuse me. Yeah. So just let me have my space right now. I don't want to be under a group where we're not able to really make an impact. I want to be able to utilize my voice like we've been doing. And so I'll just yield right there because I'm very disappointed.
Well, I just, unless you want to, I just wanted to kind of bring Kimberly up to where we are, you know, in a discussion, and we reordered our agenda to get to this letter from the chair, effectively, I guess, disbanding this ad hoc committee on the 1st of November. And so, yeah, we're feeling some kind of way about that. But anyway, I was just having a discussion with the assembly representatives, the liaisons, concerning any input they may have had relative to this and what their understanding of it was and all of that. And so where we've kind of rested at was to maybe get some understanding from your office in conjunction with the mayor, where this committee might fit in as it relates to equity and the office of equity and that kind of thing. And if we, you know, in the past, we had kind of discussed, if I may, we had kind of discussed the option of a steering committee, maybe to the executive branch, and working maybe in a format like that, and maybe some other format that works. I don't know, but I was just asking our liaisons concerning some top-down information as it relates to the mayor, and the suggestion was that kind of your office would have that kind of input with the mayor to see where we go from here, if it's really a possibility for us to interact and interface with your office and administration relative to our equity work, or if we would be just disbanded.
Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we have Kim speak, may I just address what Celeste said and what Pastor May said related to the letter first? Because I think we need to make sure that we are all that there's a little bit more information I think that would be helpful to make sure we're all getting the context of that.
Yeah,
okay?
absolutely. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I appreciate, I really do appreciate the emotion that I'm hearing and seeing, and I heard from a couple of folks that that's how that letter landed on them as well. It landed on them, I think, as being disrespectful. I think it landed on them. It sounds like, Pastor May, that you used the word being fired. And so I'm not going to defend the letter. But what I will say is that you know, I wish that Chair Constant was able to be here and to share at least what his intention was. And based on, you know, my short interaction with him, that was not the intention. The intention was not to fire. The intention was not to be disrespectful. From his vantage point, from what I understand, this was already what was agreed upon. He sent me the transcript from the meeting that essentially said that we were postponing the transition until some time period, and Felix had said end of year. So I just want to say that I mean, I hear the concern about it, but I don't think, at least from my perspective, there is any interest in disbanding this group, or there is any interest in not seeing this group as incredibly important. So that I just want to say that, because that has not been my perspective, and I've always felt, since this transition conversation began, that it was highly likely that this group would transition over to being connected with the mayor. So I wanted to just say that, because I both appreciate the concern and the emotion, and I also want to make sure that we don't mischaracterize, I think, what the intention was. So thanks.
So this is Thea. So I guess I just first want to say I'm just speaking as myself as a committee member and someone who's been part of this, for a long time. I guess I hear what you're saying, Cameron, but I also deeply believe that anytime we're interacting with each other, my intention is only visible to the other person in how I actually speak, how I actually act, how I actually present myself. My intention is my own inner self. It's not visible until you speak, act, and behave towards others. And when I read that letter today, or I guess it was yesterday, my immediate feeling was what happened to this committee I guess it was the summer following the transition of the administration, when the members of this committee were subjected to, I mean, honestly, incredibly rude, and in that instance, and I'm not saying that was true in this, but racist behavior from people that work at the municipality. And that was the reason that this group decided that that was not a good home for us anymore at the health department. And that was when we initiated this move with the help of Cameron and Felix to actually become what it says on this agenda, which is the Anchorage Equity Committee of the Assembly. We are not an ad hoc committee. We've never described ourselves that way. And this group of people has been meeting on a monthly basis now for over 2 years, really diligently trying to do the work that everybody says they want. And to then at the end, and for me, let it be known, the outcome of this, I'm not disputing. Just like Celeste said, we've been really clear from the start. We want to be involved in action. We understand that's not really the Assembly's role. And that's great. Like, I honestly don't think in the conversations we've had since Chair Constant first came that anyone has said, no, gosh, we really want to stay at the Assembly. Like, no one's disputed that. So I don't think there's a lot of disagreement about where we're headed. And thankfully, Kim is like excited to have this group as part of her work in some way, which is wonderful. So the outcome is not the issue. The issue is the way in which this is unfolding, which honestly feels hostile. And I just like Celeste said, I mean, I was wondering whether people would not show up today because of that. I mean, honestly, why would you? Really? Like, are we an imposition? Are we imposing on the Assembly? That's how that letter felt. Like that we're kind of like pushing ourselves. That's not how this group of people should be treated. This is a group of committed, passionate, skilled volunteers from our community who want to be part of making our community better. And that's how it needs to be treated. And I get that even the words of the letter kind of say that, but the manner in which it's been delivered is so tone deaf. It's honestly kind of shocking. So I'm maybe overstepping what I should be saying in this situation, but I just really feel like that was a very damaging letter. And I just really wish it hadn't happened. It's completely unnecessary. Like we're on our way. We're figuring this out to a better place. That's great. Nobody needed to have that said to them today, or at least I don't think we did. So I'll stop there.
And if I might piggyback on Thea's inroads to her thoughts and go back to the meeting that we actually had with the chair when he interfaced with us initially about coming to some kind of determination for a conclusion to some degree. And Cameron, I know you mentioned about he referred to the transcript. And when you look on paper doesn't really give you the real intent and demeanor and all of that. Even in our meeting, the chair was very dogmatic about, well, either way, when I would raise question, either way, this is what we come into. I can no longer support or resource this committee from the assembly. So either way, this is what's going to happen. This is the way it's coming down, so to speak. And that was the tone and tenor. And really for me, the letter just kind of piggybacks on that.
Mhm.
Through the chair, do you mind if I read a statement from Lori?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jasmine.
So Lori has sent in a statement that she would like me to read. So it says that she believes that Chair Constant could benefit from communication training and that there was room for him to wait until our meeting with the new administration occurred and give us some understanding as we worked on our path forward.
Thanks, Jasmine, and thanks, Lori.
And you know how spicy I am, so that was the gentle version.
Absolutely.
Well, I just want to thank everybody. I certainly, this is Cameron. I don't want to, I agree with everything you've said. So I certainly don't want to be defending the letter at all. So I wanted to just make sure we had a chance to sort of share more about, where we are before we move into the conversation about what next steps are. I really appreciate folks sharing that. So, and it looks like Mara wants to speak as well.
It looks like Mara. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead, Mara. And then I think Celeste wanted to jump in again. Mara, you're muted.
Sorry. Celeste, do you want to go first?
no. I
Okay.
went once already. You go ahead.
Okay. In addition to sharing the sentiments that everybody has already expressed, I have a really practical concern, which is, as Thea just so aptly described, the reason that this commission or committee came into being in the first place was because the mayor's office didn't want us or didn't want to do the work. My concern is with the abandonment of a commitment to this committee by the assembly. We're being tossed back and forth between the two arms of our city government, and it really feels like there's not been a consistent commitment from either arm. And so I worry about if this effort is just going to be relegated to one arm of the city government and not all of the city government, what that says about our city's commitment to these issues. And I think that the assembly should continue to have a role to play, a formal role. And if it costs something, it costs something, because that is what, what the work that we're all doing here. It costs each and every one of us every time we show up at these meetings. Nobody here is paid. So each and every one of us has borne a cost for this as well. And I just worry about the long-term sustainability of this effort if we're continually batted back and forth between the assembly and the mayor's office, because who knows what's going to happen in 3 more years.
Mara, exactly. I mean, if Suzanne is not our mayor in 3 years, then what? I thought we were trying to get to a place where, no matter who is in office, we would still be in existence. That's what I envision. And it just doesn't seem like we're that valuable to the municipality right now. It's like, whether or not equity is really that important. So that's where I'm at. I'm just like, we've been used from day one. And now that we're not needed anymore, or I mean, it just seems like we can be tossed aside. And that's not a good feeling to have. Either you really believe in equity and you want this committee to exist, or you don't.
Yeah, and I don't think the assembly chair pursuant to his authority to do this, which I'm sure is in code. But I really don't think that there is, to piggyback on that, a value placed on the work that we put in with this from the assembly side. It almost feels like, to me, we need somewhere to place you that gets you out of our hair, so to speak, and that kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Assembly Member Rivera, I see your hand up. I just want to add before we go back to you. I just so wholeheartedly agree with you, Celeste, and it's like either you want equity to be the center of all of our work, and when we first started talking about this, there was this conversation around the mayor's office is where that like actual work happens, and that's why the equity committee should be there. I just have been sitting with, why would we not have a level of equity embedded in our governing body at the assembly level and every policy that we're coming up with? If we are not centering equity in those conversations and in the mayor's office in the kind of practical side of the work, then we will not be in an equitable society. Assemblymember Rivera, over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. So, certainly I, just like Cameron, am not going to defend that letter because I had nothing to do with it. And I certainly wouldn't have gone this way if I were the chair of the assembly. But Chris is using his authority as the chair as he sees fit. And I really wish that Chris was in the room to listen to this conversation. I think he would have benefited from it. Likely he would have been combative, but I think he would have benefited from it. I would suggest, since at least likely until April, Chris will continue to be the chair of the assembly. I would suggest that maybe this group, in whatever future form that it takes, which I hope we get to that conversation soon, that Chris be invited to come back and to listen first and foremost to the concerns that this group has. And I do think that it's unfortunate that we're in this position, that folks are feeling this kind of way. I think, as some folks said, because it didn't have to transpire this way. I think, as Thea said, we were already going this path. It sort of feels a little bit like now the chair is sort of like kicking you along the path. And I can understand that. I will say, one of the things that we had talked about and I think this group had talked about it, and then we had talked about with the mayor when Cameron and I met with her, was enshrining this in municipal code under the Office of Equity and Justice. So not under the Office of the Mayor, nor under the Assembly's legislative branch part of code, but under the Office of Equity and Justice. So there is still intent to do that, so that systematically it is still there in code until any future body may change code. But you can't ever get away with that unless you put it in the charter. So I think that's intent is still active, and would love to move forward with that once we're ready, so that this group can feel assured you are in the code, you're under the Office of Equity and Justice, and there is a systematic place for this to exist, regardless of administration, regardless of assembly. Again, caveat, unless a future assembly decides to remove that in code, but that won't happen as long as I'm here. Thanks.
Yes, Mr. Felix. So just to be clear, I think I'm understanding you very well to this degree, that putting this committee in code under the Office of Equity and Justice would summarily take this group out from under the mayor's auspices and or the assembly's auspices, and regardless of turnover in administrations, that this committee would be effectively in code under the Office of Equity and Justice, regardless to whom the mayor might put as a chief equity officer or what have you. So am I understanding you clearly?
Yes, you are. And then I would also add that getting to a little bit of what Mara was talking about, I think there is intention to go back to the original intent of the Office of Equity and Justice, which is that this is a office which works with and is not with both branches of government and is not siloed to necessarily one branch or another. Obvious, and that's going to require possibly some further code changes to make that happen. So, yeah, there certainly is, I think, a lot of work to go into the future to get to the direction that I'm hearing you all want to go to.
Kathy, you have your hand up, and then we'll go to Heather.
So I have like a question for Assemblymember Cameron and Felix. Is there another committee that is working in the municipality, rather be, the assembly or with the mayor's office, that looks like this committee?
Mm. Short answer. My short answer would be no. There is no committee that looks like this committee, in that this committee is a committee of community members.
And that is intentionally designed to bring a broad cross section of representation and organizations and a variety of things, and the way that it functions is very much community led. So there's some things about this committee that are very unique and very important for our city.
Okay. So it sounds like the both of you see value in this committee, and there is no other committee that looks like this. I don't want to question Chris's intentions, but were the two of you able to actually have a sit down with Chris and talk about the letter?
No,
No, Chris
I
is
was only
traveling right now.
Yeah.
So we haven't been able to sit down with him, but that's probably something that we should do when he gets back in town.
Yeah, I think that's really important because as Felix said, I think it would be good for us for you guys to think about inviting him to a meeting. But in the meantime, I think both Felix and I would be willing to try to reach out to him and sort of share what we discussed at this meeting and share some of the concerns that have been voiced.
Okay, thank you.
Heather, you were next up.
Yeah, kind of along that line, I think moving forward, we need to distinguish ourselves from the Anchorage Equal Rights Commission, because that is a group that is appointed by the mayor, and I don't know the details of the work that they do, but I can see where there maybe would be overlap, or at least confusion about overlap. I think the work that we're doing is different than what they do, and so if somebody was just looking at a list and saying, well, there is the Equal Rights Commission, isn't that adequate? And it's not necessarily the same work that we're doing. And so I think we want to make the case that we're doing something that's different and needed in a different way.
Through the chair, could I read another statement from Lori? So through the chair, this is from Lori Pickett. She said that she would like to give a warm welcome to Kim, and she apologizes that she can't be here in person. She also does not recommend inviting Chris back to the meeting. She said, we don't have time to train him at this point. We have work to do.
Thanks, Jasmine, and thanks, Lori. I think the recording of this meeting will be available if he wishes to listen into it, and there's been a lot of good learning so far. Any discussion before we give Kim the space to introduce herself? Okay, welcome, Kim. Thank you for joining us.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. Good evening. I want to start by saying thank you for welcoming me into this space. I want to thank Thea for sharing out the work that this committee has managed to accomplish at a very scary, contentious, divisive time in our city. I had the opportunity to sit in previously, and full disclosure, I am less than 2 weeks into my seat as Chief Equity Officer. But being invited in to learn about your very important work, and I had the opportunity to meet with a few of you that are here, and learn about some of your challenges and also about your victories. I was very inspired after that time, mostly because, as I understand it, this group has managed to stay together and has chosen to do that at will, even when at times, again, from my understanding, you haven't always felt so encouraged to do that, to do so. Obviously, I can't comment on anything that happened prior to my taking this office, but I can speak to my understanding of what this is hopefully going to look like, or what it could look like, which is what I would like to do today. And I want to honor you as I did the last time we were together in this space, just honor you for your work and for your dedication and for keeping it going. I know that, as you've shared here, again, I've been very much in a listening space, but I know it hasn't been easy, but it shows the dedication that these community members, these beautiful, diverse, big-hearted community members have to our community. And as I said the last time I was in your company, that should not only be celebrated, but it should be uplifted. And in my role, I have the intention to do just that, if you will accept that. Not speaking for Chair Constant because he is not in the room, but I will say that we did have the opportunity to meet, and he was aware of the plan from, as I understood from our first meeting, to move this committee under the Office of Equity and Justice. Also, even as recent as today, I spoke with the mayor and we were sharing about this committee and our mutual enthusiasm for this committee living with the Office of Equity and Justice. In terms of myself, as I stated in an email, I think the first was sent on September 14th, and also today. I am anxious to learn what sort of supports that this committee is looking for or is needing to go forward. And I also know that there may be funds required for you to do your work. I have funds in my budget that I would like to talk about with you, to share with you, to support what you need, but I need to know what you need. So I'll ask for that again, so I can best be of service and put supports in place. I will say that I also second Assemblyman Rivera, and agree that it would be nice to have Chair Constant in the room. But, in enshrining this committee in municipal code under the Office of Equity and Justice, if that is the next step, I will do what I can, however I can, to support that. You have my commitment. And so before I yield back, I just wanted to say that to you, and I hope that I am heard. I hope that my enthusiasm is felt. I hate to hear of the hurt feelings, but all I can do is be of assistance going forward, which is what I intend to do, if you'll take that. Thank you.
I would say thanks, and we welcome you on board again, and also welcome the thought processes that you've gone through as it relates to who we are and what we do, and that kind of thing, and your openness and your welcoming for this committee to continue to function. I guess my question would be is, at this point, and I know it's early in the process, but at this particular point, do you have any thoughts on the framework of what that might look like in conjunction with your office? We are a very diverse community, committee, but would it be palpable for our committee to function as is in relationship to your office?
Thank you, Pastor May. The Office of Equity and Justice is going through a bit of a reset, possibly even a name change to the Office of Equity and Inclusion, because we feel, even just 2 weeks in, again, we feel that would better convey the function of the office or what it is anticipated to be through a lot of feedback and consensus. I think that justice denotes a legal component. It is our office has no legal component, and I am not a lawyer. So in the context of that, no, I do not know what this could look like. However, I am open to finding our way forward together.
Thank you.
Recognizing you're a couple weeks in and you're in the middle of a reset, is there a vision for the office that you could share with us at this time?
Thank you. Currently, I'll tell you what's happening right now in the office is currently we are working to better clarify what we do and what we do not do. I feel that is very important in respect to my predecessors who both of their tenures ended in highly publicized ways and for very different reasons. I think, again, even going to the name change, there is some confusion around our function. That if you want to go by what the mayor hopes for the office, the mayor hopes that equity will be woven into every part of the municipality. We know that is a muscle. And from the feedback that I have heard and learned, again, in just my short 2 full weeks on the job, that is a muscle that we need to flex. And there needs to be more clarification. I will say that we are working internally and externally. For example, there are issues that need our attention here at the municipality. One of those rising to the top, HR is a big concern. We have many department heads who are hoping that their departments can look more reflective of the city of Anchorage and feel there are many unnecessary barriers. So that is something that is rising to the top. Internally, we are also looking at the function and the structure of the office. We just had Erica from the EOE who submitted her resignation and has moved to a contractor, excuse me. she's moved to a contract, the status of a contractor. The office is not federally required, but her position is. And so we are looking at our structure, and we're also thinking about ways that we can make the municipality a more welcoming and inclusive place to work. As you know, in many departments, we have a very high vacancy rate, and we need to think about retention and what that looks like. Externally, we also want to clarify with constituents and with the people, again, the function of the office, so they know what we do, connecting them to services, serving as a conduit to the mayor, and helping, further equity on a citywide basis in ways that we maybe haven't thought about before. So those are some of the issues that we are tackling. But really, and I've said this to anyone, I am in a listening space. I am not a government person. I am 2 weeks into being a government person. So I believe in nothing about us without us. I would not show up to any person, group, organization and hand out directives. That is not how I work, nor is that how I like to be worked with. So it is crucial, I see in my role, for me to worry less about the list of what we're going to do and more about the humans at the core of this work, and making sure that they are heard and that I am listening, and that whatever we do, we're doing it together, collectively. That is the most important to me, versus creating a list of to-dos to appease anyone. That's not my intent. But as I mentioned, there are some issues that are very quickly rising to the top that I think that our office is suited to tackle.
Thank you, Thea.
That's awesome to hear how you're starting off, Kim, and how you mean to keep going. One of the ways I think this committee could really help is, I guess, a couple different ways. One, as we shared with you, and we had kind of our small group meeting with the 2 former co-chairs and the 2 new co-chairs, we shared like our charter and some of the things that we've worked on together. And those are things that I feel like had a lot of engagement from this committee and can just be really helpful documents going forward. So that's one thing I think we have. Another thing is that we have kind of 2 years in a row come up with kind of an annual work program. And not to say that has to be the program, but I think as your office is kind of uncovering these priorities, this committee can really be helpful in, thinking, okay, it's a goal to have the departments reflect the community, and, they can identify barriers. This committee can also has so much experience with people trying to access those employment opportunities or contracting opportunities or grant opportunities, and I think can really help kind of shorten that, kind of discovery period where you're trying to figure out what the answers are. Like, a lot of the answers are kind of in this group. So, I mean, I think it's exciting to think about just a very reciprocal relationship between your office and the committee. If we continue to meet monthly together, I think that cadence provides time where, as you're doing your work, you can bring questions and ideas and concerns to the committee. At the same time, the committee members can bring those things back to you. And it can just be a nice collaborative relationship where we're really moving forward on, the ones you brought up are ones we've talked about right here. And then some additional ones are, we've really talked about the grants, kind of barriers around grants when you're trying to access it as a small organization. And I think some of those, they've been kind of well identified, and I think there's probably an appetite with the new leadership to tackle some of those. So yeah, I just want to say I think could be really a great relationship.
Yeah, and if I could piggyback on that, and I think that's apropos, as has been stated, My question is, and I don't know if it's really a question, but you mentioned, Kim, about the legalities of it all. And we had prior discussions with our liaisons relative to what the legal team might say, how we would interface, with administration and all of that. But I guess at this point, my question would be, is it feasible and or possible? I mean, we are a committee made up of community members, and we were previously, until, another month, Anchorage Equity Committee of the Assembly. But in transition, it would be appropriate and or possible for us to become something like the Anchorage Equity Committee of the Department of Equity and Justice, or the Department of Equity and Inclusion, whatever that comes to be. Will that be a possibility?
Thank you, Pastor May. As I shared, I am not a lawyer. However, I don't see why that wouldn't be a possibility. That is something that I would need to speak more about with Eva on our legal team. But I can say that I will devote the time to exploring that. You have my commitment.
Thank you. And I had one more question, and I'm gonna yield. I think I've said enough about all of this. And I'll direct this question to Mr. Rivera. You were speaking about the code, and I guess my question would be, what would actually be the process for embedding that in code?
Yeah, thanks. So that would be an ordinance. So it would be something that would be drafted, then put on an agenda. It would need a public hearing and then a vote. So it would take approximately 3-4 weeks to get it done. So certainly we would have to move quick-ish if we wanted to get it done before November 1st, which I think is everyone's goal.
Thank you, sir.
So I have a couple questions. Kim, how big is your office and how many employees will you have? And is the Office of Equal Opportunity moving under your umbrella? And then for the question about not sure of what the Anchorage Equal Rights Commission does, they investigate complaints of discrimination. So.
Could you repeat the first question?
I don't even remember. How many employees do you have within your office? Is the Office of Equal Opportunity moving within your office?
Right. So currently it is myself. We are actually just today, I was sent information about a fellow who will be joining us in the office. We are going to be hiring a junior admin in that office within the coming weeks. So by the second week of October, it will be myself and another individual. And then after the first of the year, I will be looking to full-time staff that junior admin person. Whether the temporary person stays or not is still up in the air. So currently myself, but that's quickly going to change to 2 in the second week of October as we have it planned now with the addition of a fellow. In terms of the other office that you mentioned, the Office of the
OEO, Office of Equal Opportunity.
Right. So they are not housed within the Office of Equity and Justice.
Okay. So there's a lot of work as it relates to equity. And I'm already, so you might have 2 people working in your office. That's full. Because I don't care, this has always been the problem when it comes to equity and fighting discrimination. We don't put the money in these offices to staff them fully so that they can do their job adequately. And that's a concern of mine. You said you're new to that. That's an issue if you really are going to be effective. The other concern that I have is, and I hear everybody saying how lovely it is going to be to move this underneath the Office of Equity and Justice, or but again, you know, there's a lot of work. You're going to have 2 employees, maybe a fellow, you know, and I'm just concerned about that. And I can't wrap my hand around why this cannot be elevated underneath the assembly and the mayor jointly, just like the office, the ombudsman. I mean, all right, thanks.
I just want to ask on that last one, Felix, can you just say a little bit more? Because it sounded like what you were saying earlier was there was an intention to have the Office of Equity and Justice be in kind of the same status that Celeste was just describing. Is that, did I misunderstand what you were saying, or can you just describe that some more?
You
Yeah.
missed it, because I'm saying underneath the mayor and the assembly, not underneath the Office of Equity and Justice.
So I guess one clarification, then I guess a question to you, Celeste. So just to clarify, the ombudsman is not under the mayor. The ombudsman's only under the assembly. But on clarification question to you, Celeste. So are you saying this committee itself, not the Office of Equity and Justice, but this committee should be under both the assembly and the mayor?
That's what I'm saying. And I remember when I worked for Mayor Mark Begich, originally I was under the Office of Employment, but he changed it to where I was a direct report to the mayor. And so it gives it that statute. I mean, you know, it elevates that work so that people will see, I mean, how important it is. And because you're reporting directly to the mayor and the assembly. You know, that's just my 2 cents.
Sure.
And-
So certainly there is work that will be happening to go back to the original intent of the Office of Equity and Justice being both under the mayor and the assembly. I think that is work that is ongoing, conversations that are ongoing. But in terms of the other aspect of the committee itself, or whatever future evolution it has, being under both, that's not something that I've necessarily contemplated. So certainly happy to think on it, and happy to hear what other committee members also think.
Well, I would add to that, Felix. I think that the idea as presented was the same thought that Mara was speaking of earlier in the discourse about being connected to both entities, the legislative branch and the executive branch, and working across channels. And I think our co-chair, Ms. Taylor, kind of alluded to that in her discourse concerning effectively working across channels as well, because a lot of what this committee is about has legislative overtones as well as administrative executive overtones. And so, yeah.
I guess I see the sort of nesting of this committee within the Office of Equity and Inclusion as an option to, based on what you were saying, Felix, as an option to sort of continue to work with both bodies, with this office potentially going into an ordinance or code to be under both the assembly and the mayor's office, but I might have misunderstood that part.
I think he was saying he would consider that and give some thought to that, but initially our discourse was about embedding this committee in code under the Office of Equity and Justice was the initial
Yeah, this is Cameron.
thought.
Can I speak to that for a second?
Please do, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the from my understanding, the two pieces are if what Kim is saying, and based on what we've heard from the mayor, that the part of the question is who is going to support the committee. So in this transition between being supported by legislative services from the assembly, and whether in the transition the mayor's office and Kim are willing to step in and provide the administrative support. So, making sure that we have a space and the kinds of administrative support that we would need. So that's one piece, and that's something that I think just needs to be requested. And Kim, you might be able to speak to that in terms of what the timing on that might be and when the committee might be able to know whether that's possible or not. And then the other part of the conversation is whether or not to committees in the mayor has the ability to move the committee to a steering committee for the Office of Equity and Justice without a code change. She can just do that and to just begin to utilize this committee in that fashion. And that can happen, as soon as she says yes to that. But then the process of actually developing the code language and getting that finalized and getting this committee to weigh in on that exactly, so that we make sure that we're doing it the way that this committee feels like it should be, and consulting the mayor and others, and then getting that to the assembly and getting that passed. And so that, as Felix said, could happen as quickly as a few weeks, or we could take a little bit longer to do it, depending on the process. So I see those things as related, but not necessarily the same. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
That was helpful. I have one follow-up question on that. If the mayor were to name this a steering committee of the Office of Equity and Inclusion, are we held to the same requirements that a commission would be held to in terms of number of members, mayoral appointment, et cetera?
I mean, others can speak to that have more experience than me, but I believe if it is a committee created by the mayor, then it has a lot more flexibility in terms of how it's created and who's on it and how it functions. I don't think it has the same requirements, but Felix and others who have maybe more experience than I do may disagree.
No, generally, I do agree with Cameron, with the big caveat that we do need to take this through a legal review. But yes, I do believe that the mayor has the authority, just like the assembly has the authority to create different kind of entities like a task force or a special kind of committee. And I think this would be one of those kinds of entities that the mayor could create. And it would generally not have to follow the same rules as boards and commissions. But again, that would be something that I would need to take through for legal review.
Yeah, and it was my understanding previously that even a steering committee, there were some ramifications that govern that. But I guess to put everything in a nutshell that I'm hearing and that I know, and that's two things. One is of immediacy, and meaning that a month from now we effectively disbanded. And so the immediacy of the moment on one hand is we are looking prior to disbandment, we're looking to find a landing place, whether that be this committee stays together and functions alongside of with under Kim's office, or however that might look. That's on one hand, and the other hand is a long-term solution for what we're going to look like. And I think working together with all of these parties that are speaking even now is going to determine what that'll look like really going forward long term. But I see that we have an immediate need right now as far as continuing on in the immediacy of the moment. And so I guess we do, as you were saying, Felix, and maybe Kim, and with the mayor and all of that, I guess we do need to get some answers in the short term, because we have like 30 days to exist or not exist.
So if I could speak to that real quick, I think that the only thing that the chair is at this point, that the chair has the authority to not have legislative services support the committee. But Felix and I have absolute ability to have space for the committee to meet, that the committee can continue to meet. There's no reason for there to be a fear of disbandment. I think the only thing that the chair has done is said, as of whatever date he put on there, legislative services is not going to, staff this meeting. But we certainly can make sure that there's meetings and I think before, Thea and Pastor May, if you remember, we had our legislative aides helping with the meeting. We had I think McZaltel's aide and my aide were helping do emails. We had space where the committee met. So I don't think there's any reason to think that the committee is going to be disbanded. I think it's a matter of whether or not the mayor is interested in taking up the administrative support or not. And I think that's something that we need to find out soon.
Yeah, and thank you, Cameron, because my understanding, even with the meeting with the chair, was to the degree that we would not have the administrative support from the clerk's office, but and my thought from that was, if we could facilitate, what we were doing another way, that would have been a way to go forward. But I guess I kind of got stuck on this Anchorage Equity Committee of the Assembly is formally concluded, effective November 1st. I guess I kind of got stuck on that, and maybe a few of us are stuck on that. It basically says we're done as of this particular date.
Yeah, he doesn't have the authority to disband this committee in its. I mean, he has the authority to.
No, Cameron. Sorry, I had to disagree. As someone who has been chair, it is the chair's prerogative to create or disband committees. So yes, he does have the power to do that, and I think that's what he's effectively done.
Right.
It's a wrap.
Is through the letter. He's effectively said November 1st, this committee is done. But Cameron is also saying, fine, this committee is, as the Equity Committee of the Assembly, is done on November 1st, but it doesn't mean that Cameron and I can't help you continue to meet and continue to do your work, even though you're going to be a non-recognized informal group. But that's all assuming that we're not able to move forward with some type of recognition under the Office of Equity and Justice / Equity and Inclusion by then. So either way, I think there is a path forward to continue to let this committee meet. The administrative support, that kind of stuff, maybe not. It all depends on how those conversations go.
Yeah. Thanks, Felix. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, and relative to the King's English, I've been far enough around the teacup to find the handle.
Yeah. So I just want to share just those comments that were just shared, because we talk about how important equity is. I know I've heard the Assembly share that often. And then we are where we are today. We care a lot about equity, and we have this huge budget, but we don't have enough money to finance this committee, basically is what I'm understanding. And so, not that it costs a lot to operate this committee, but for some reason, we don't have the funding to provide the administrative support for this important equity committee that we so value in everything that we do and everything that we see. You see how that doesn't add up to me? And that's why I'm out.
This is Thea. I really think we've spent way too much time as a committee talking about being a committee and not enough time, and I'm just speaking in the last few months, doing the work that everyone's here to do. And I think evidence of that is that, we had 3 committee members put a lot of time into the important topic of language access, which again is another thing we shared with Kim that's a really valuable piece of work that will help the work that she's going to do move along quicker. And we haven't even gotten to look at it as a committee because we, I think, have spent the last 3 meetings, and now we're spending all this one talking about this. So I would just suggest, and we have I think just under 50 minutes left, that we just make a plan for our next meeting. And if we don't have it, so I guess I want to speak to what Cameron and Felix were saying. This group is here because we want to help and influence the work of the municipality to make a more equitable community. Just to meet without any function, that doesn't do it. That's not the point. I mean, we could all get together and have dinner together, and that would be awesome. But that's, that we don't need you guys to help us do that. So I think we should just spend the last 10 minutes, if it's okay, like deciding, like, are we meeting in October? Are we meeting upstairs in the mayor's office with, by the way, I start up there also on Monday. So I can't speak for what my job duties are, but just personally, I'm absolutely 1,000% willing to support Kim and helping support this committee if I'm allowed to by the chief of staff. So I just think we should figure out what we're doing next. And we should just leave behind as much as we can this kind of unfortunate thing that's happened, which I'm just so it's just so unnecessary that this happened. And I'm really sad that Celeste walked out, and I don't blame her because this is just a very unnecessary kick in the pants that we just didn't deserve. So anyway, sorry, I'm bringing it back up again. But I said we're trying not to, but anyway, yeah.
Taffy, go ahead.
We talked about intention versus impact, right? And I hear so much. Our intention is, and this is the impact of that intention, right? I would say that from the beginning, the intention of the chief equity officer's position was so that the position can have power and be serving both the mayor's office and the assembly. I hope that that's the same thing that we're moving forward to do, because then this committee can actually have a voice through the chief equity officer, no matter who is in power. Right? So if the intention of the chief equity officer's position by both the assembly and the current mayor is to make that position be similar to the ombudsman's position, which is the original intention for that position, I think that's what the assembly and the mayor needs to do immediately. And then I would be more than happy to be a part of something that our voices in the committee under the chief equity officer will actually be heard in spaces. However, if just putting us under the chief equity officer's office is to just so that they can get rid of us, then I'm out too. Right? So I think that's what I would hope that the assembly members that are in here, Cameron and Felix, I would hope that, and also like whoever has the ear, like Kim, you have the ear of the mayor. They need to be very open about what the intention is and what they're going to do. And enough of this just, oh, our intention, okay, no, no, tell us, what is your plan? How are you going to move forward? Is the will of the people, because that is the reason why the equity officer committee, I mean, the equity officer position was intended for, because the people wanted it. And the people wanted that position to be of power, but shared between both. That didn't happen. So let's make it happen, because that's now we have a chance to make it happen. And like to avoid all this bickering for no. Okay. So I'm hoping that you're hearing me out. Those of you who are able to speak to Constant and also speak to the mayor, that we need straight answers, and then let's move forward. Like enough of this talk, and I hear you, Thea. I'm all for like let's make actual actions, and then not just like meets about rather we are a committee of whoever. As a matter of fact, like I don't even care where we land. I just want to do the work, and if we need to go and testify every day, like at the assembly meetings to make our voices heard, let's do it. Because like we're all here for free, and no one's paying us to do this work, and no one wants to also put money in the equity work that they want to do. So let's just continue doing the work. So that's what I would say. Thanks.
Thanks, Taffy, Lori, and then Pastor May.
Thank you, Taffy, and thank you, Thea. I'm very sorry that Celeste left, but I understand why. Kim, I'm excited about the chance that we have to make an impact with you and in this work, and I hope we find a way forward. I would love to be able to do the work in language access and move that forward. And I just wanted to thank you for coming and listening to this. But like Taffy said, and Thea says, we really just want to do the work. And what Chris has done to us in the last 3 meetings is he's taken away our ability to focus on all the work that we were working on and just thrown us into chaos. And it's unfortunate that we're in this position right now. But I believe that if we can find a place and a way to move forward where we can feel like there is ways we can make impacts, and that all the hard work we're doing and the knowledge we bring and the experiences that we have with our communities and our organizations is going to be acted on with respect, then we will be there. Thank you.
Yes, and I was going to say my thoughts and thinking is along the lines of what Thea was saying earlier, and that is this. I think maybe what, in my mind, we need to do at this particular point is have or ask Ms. Waller, to communicate directly, with the mayor's office and whomever you might need to talk to relative to the continuation of us meeting, and if it's just initially the space provided or whatever, something going on and what that connectivity might be, and also ask our assembly liaisons, you mentioned it earlier, Mr. Felix, if we could have some definitive answer by our October meeting about what space, as it relates to code, under the Office of Equity and Justice or Equity and Inclusion, whatever that might come to be, or you mentioned looking into some type of codifying to have the committee relative to the executive and the legislative branches, and what that might look like. And maybe in our next meeting, if you guys can have some answers for us on that, and maybe Ms. Kim can have some answers as it relates to our ability to continue to meet, maybe in meeting spaces that she has available to her. I think you alluded to in our prior meeting that you do have space that community folk can hold meetings. And so that we would have a meeting space at a regular time, and until all of this gets settled and we have the answers that we need legally and from the codifying and even from your office. So looking forward to that being next meeting, something we can make a determination, and going forward from October, at least in an interim basis, we know what we're going to do.
Thank you. As I said prior, Pastor May, you have my support. You have the support of the mayor. And as I've also requested, I need to know exactly what you need. I am not able to take anything to the mayor that is not specific and action driven. So if I can get that from you or from this committee so that I am better positioned to take it to the mayor, that would be what I need.
Well, let me say this hurriedly. One thing we do need right now is an ability to continue to meet, if it's in your space or wherever. And so that's one thing we would need to know going forward.
Yeah, and I believe that Assemblyman Perez Verdilla and also Assemblyman Rivera did say that they could commit to assisting and helping you find that. Is that right?
Yes,
that is.
there's not going to be any issue with October meeting because we'll still have administrative support from the clerk's office. But beyond that, yes, we can continue to help you in some way, shape, or form.
This is Taylor. I think the way I'm hearing it is our October meeting can continue as scheduled, and then beginning in November, and we can send this over to you, would be admin support space to meet. And then we, as a committee, do our strategic planning session in January. And maybe that would be a time where we can really say, you've had time in your office to ramp up, and we as a committee can spend November and December really looking at or that January meeting, kind of looking at what the long-term resource request might be.
Yeah, and if I
Yeah.
could just add that real quick, that just to be really specific. So Felix and I have the ability to give people access to this space you're in now. So I'm able to, as an assembly member, ask for the use of this space, meaning the physical space you're in now. The difference is that whether it has admin support or not, whether there's someone from the legislative services or clerk's office involved or not. So the physical space piece, I think, is something that Felix and I can continue to help with and make sure that there's a space for you to actually be. The question is what other kinds of support does this committee need to continue to function effectively? So.
Real quick, it's 5:59. Is anyone concerned if we extend for 5 minutes? Pastor May says 5 minutes. Thea.
I just want to reiterate, this group of people is not here because they want to meet just with each other to meet. So I think the logistics of having a space and having, someone to send out the invitation and help the co-chairs draft the agenda, that's basic logistics. The important piece is that this committee has what Lori described, a role that has influence, and what Taffy described, can have a voice, and what Celeste said, have a voice and some role and some ability to influence the work of the municipality as it relates to the whole community and to build equity. So that's the main thing that we need, is to know where do we fit in the power structure. And to me, it's not that complicated. Like, if we're going to be a steering committee to the Office of Equity and Justice, I mean, honestly, I feel like next month we should meet in the mayor's conference room. Someone up there, maybe it's me, sends out the invite, takes some notes, puts the agenda together, and we just start working together, because Kim's figuring it out. You know, she's 2 weeks on the job. You know, like Taylor says, we have this cadence for figuring out our priorities. We have priorities set for the year that we could still be working on. And those might be of interest to Kim, and we can figure it out as we go. So I'm not saying we have to do it that way. I think we're kind of overthinking it a little bit. And, you know, if Kim's up for it, if the mayor is open to that, and, you know, we can get the basic logistics together. But the most important piece is knowing what our role is. And, you know, is somebody committing to having this group of people help influence the work that they're doing?
Yeah, you were speaking about next meeting, but we still have clerk support for one more meeting. So we have this space and the clerk support for next meeting. And so it's after that we have a concern. My question, Mr. Felix, you mentioned about looking into the legalities of all of this and also the codifying of all of this. Is that something that you can have some answers for us in our next meeting?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I would hope that the legal analysis wouldn't take too long. So yes, I can, as long as that's done in short order, I can get that, all of the information, perhaps even drafts of ordinances, so that if this committee would like to spend any time looking at that, you can, but you don't have to really. It should be simple enough. But I can have all of that stuff ready by the October meeting.
Okay, that would be appreciated, and then we could have some determination on the direction, long term, or what have you. And as Ms. Thea alluded to, maybe following October, November, if need be. Cameron has said he could provide a space even here, but also you mentioned the conference room or whatever, and so I think we've kind of decided that some way, somehow, we're going to press on.
Thank you, Pastor May. I just quickly wanted to add again, and this is with my limited context for the history of this group and for whatever resistance that this group has experienced prior. Again, I can't speak to anything that happened before I came here, but I can say that I am a willing partner, and I can also say from my experience in the world that I think that roads become a little rougher before you are about to reach a peak or a plateau. That is something that I have just seen consistent in my life. And I hear the concerns of this group. I hear the emotion. I know as a person of color what it is like to feel like an afterthought. And I want to say that along with my support, I just want to encourage this group to keep going and say that maybe the road is shaky because you are about to do something really incredible. And I want you to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks for the encouragement.
Thank you, Kim. That feels like a great way to end our meeting today. We will plan to meet in this room in October and then move forward in November with October's agenda, including the language access audit plan and an update from Felix on some ordinance and code changes. Anything before we adjourn?
One final thing. Congrats to our new co-chairs.
Thank you. I'm excited for Joan to be here for our next meeting. That's it. Bye, everyone. Happy Thursday evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.